Good morning, comrades, activists, feminists, colleagues, and partners in justice. My name is Rosie Motene, and it is an absolute pleasure to address you today as we mark World Toilet Day. A day that may sound simple on its surface, but at its core represents one of the greatest and most urgent human rights challenges of our time. Safe, accessible, and dignified sanitation is not a luxury, it's a right. Unfortunately, it's a right that millions, particularly women, children, and vulnerable communities, are systematically denied every single day. As somebody who's worked in the gender-based violence space for over 2 decades and has been a member of the 1 in 9 campaign from the beginning, I've seen firsthand how unsafe sanitation is not merely a health issue. It's also a safety issue. It's a gender justice issue. It's a dignified issue. It's an economic issue. And it is one that demands an intersectional approach if we are truly committed to bring about sustainable change. Let's highlight the crisis that we don't speak loudly enough about. Across the world, approximately 3.5 billion people still lack access to safe toilets. That number is staggering. But behind that number, there are lived experiences that we need to center. Women and girls walk long distances at night just to relieve themselves, risking all forms of harassment, rape, assault, kidnapping, trafficking, and other atrocities. If we factor in children who miss school because their toilets are unsafe, unhygienic, and in some cases simply non-existent. In the conversation, we should also center people who live with disabilities because they're unable to access and use sanitation facilities that were never designed for them in mind. And of course, we cannot forget the families who live in constant fear because proper sanitation is more of a privilege that they cannot access. The reality is that unsafe toilets don't only harm the body, they harm the mind. They erode our confidence, they deepen shame. They place people, particularly women and children, into cycles of fear and vulnerability that often follow them from childhood all the way through to adulthood. Looking at the gendered reality of unsafe sanitation, we have to be honest about who bears the greatest burden in this crisis. Because the reality is that when there's no safe sanitation, it is the women who have to work around that and plan their days on when they can relieve themselves just to avoid being violated or seen or hurt. It is the girls who have to stay at home during their menstrual cycles because their schools don't have dignified space for them to manage their periods. It is the young children who were exposed to danger simply by using a toilet that is far away from their homes. It's the survivors of gender-based violence who have to relive trauma every time they have to visit a facility that is unsafe, that is often exposed, that is also incredibly degrading. This is why sanitation cannot be isolated from conversations about gender-based violence, about bodily autonomy, about mental health, about community safety. All of these issues are intertwined. And that is why an intersectional approach is non-negotiable. If we look at sanitation only through the lens of infrastructure, we will continue to fail our communities. We need to ask questions such as, how does poverty intersect with gender in the experience of unsafe toilets? How do disability, age, location, and social marginalization shape access to sanitation? How do unsafe toilets contribute to gender-based violence, both directly and indirectly? How does the lack of sanitation deepen psychological distress, especially for women, children, and survivors of all forms of violence? Intersectionality allows us to address inequality at its root, not its symptoms. It helps us recognize that sanitation is connected to power. Who has it versus who doesn't have it, and who is forced to risk their lives because of this imbalance. There's a definite link between sanitation, safety, and emotional well-being. The reality is that when sanitation is unsafe, communities cannot thrive. Women cannot exercise full autonomy over the body. Children cannot live or learn with dignity. Gender-based violence prevention becomes nearly impossible. Emotional well-being deteriorates under the pressure of constant fear and humiliation. Conversely, when sanitation is safe and accessible, girls can go to school every day. Communities feel safer, walking, living, and simply existing. Health systems are less burdened. Therefore, we need to understand that World Toilet Day is not symbolic. It's strategic. It forces the world to confront what we often ignore. It makes invisible suffering visible. It pushes governments, institutions, the powers that be to move beyond sympathy into action. Today is also a reminder that the struggle for sanitation rights is a struggle for human rights. And like the spirit of 1 in 9 campaign, it calls on all of us to show solidarity, to amplify voices, and to challenge the systems that perpetuate those inequalities. Today is a call to action. We should ask ourselves, how will we advocate for safer sanitation in our communities? How will we ensure that gender, disability, age, and socioeconomic realities are part of the conversation about infrastructure? How will we center the voices of women and children who live in this crisis every single day? How will we push those policymakers to understand that sanitation is not optional, it's not secondary, but foundational to our dignity and to our safety? Because until every single person, regardless of who they are or where they live, have access to a safe toilet, our work remains unfinished. So let us commit, not just today, not tomorrow, but every day, to building a world where sanitation supports life. It protects dignity and strengthens the fight against violence and inequality. Let us learn. Let us work together. Let us do it loud and courageously. Thank you.